The bass pounded through Meghan's chest like a second heartbeat, reverberating off the walls of the underground Seoul nightclub until she couldn't tell where the music ended and her own pulse began. Strobe lights sliced through the darkness in violent bursts of neon pink and electric blue, illuminating hundreds of bodies moving in synchronized chaos. The air was thick, heavy with expensive perfume, cigarette smoke that somehow slipped past the ventilation system, and the metallic tang of spilled champagne mixing with sweat on the dance floor. Meghan pressed herself against the bar's edge, her borrowed dress, a shimmering silver thing that belonged to her roommate Yuna, clinging uncomfortably to her curves. She hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. $47 left in her bank account until next week's stipend, and she'd already spent 12 of those on subway fare this month. Art school in Seoul had sounded like a dream 6 months ago in Harlem. Now it felt like survival. Her vision swam slightly as she gripped the sticky bar top. When had she last had water? The room tilted and she blinked hard, trying to focus. Yuna had dragged her here, promising free drinks and networking opportunities with people who actually bought art. Then Yuna had disappeared into the VIP section an hour ago, leaving Meghan alone in a sea of Korean socialites who looked through her like she was invisible. That's when she felt it, a gaze so intense it cut through the chaos like a blade. Meghan's head turned almost involuntarily toward the source. Across the club, elevated in a private booth surrounded by glass walls and men in expensive suits, a man stared directly at her. Not through her. At her. His face was partially shadowed, but she could make out sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that seemed to see straight into her soul, and an expression of such focused intensity that her breath caught. He was stunning in a dangerous way, all controlled power wrapped in a black suit that probably cost more than her entire year's tuition. His hair was styled back, revealing a face that could have been carved from marble except for the unmistakable humanity burning in his eyes. Something about him made her think of barely restrained violence and unexpected tenderness existing in the same space. Their eyes locked. The noise faded. 4-3 heartbeats, maybe 4, the world contained only that connection, raw, primal, and utterly inexplicable. She didn't know him. She'd never seen him before. But every cell in her body recognized something in him that made her want to run toward him and away from him in equal measure. Then the room spun violently. Her vision went dark at the edges, tunneling inward. She couldn't remember if she'd eaten breakfast yesterday either. The floor rushed up to meet her. Strong arms caught her before impact. The scent of expensive cologne and something uniquely masculine enveloped her. Through her fading consciousness she heard a voice, deep, authoritative, speaking rapid Korean to someone nearby. Then, barely a whisper against her ear, one word in accented English, ours. When Meghan's eyes fluttered open, the first thing she registered was softness. Ridiculous, cloud-like softness beneath her. The second thing was silence, not the oppressive silence of her cramped studio apartment, but the kind of silence that came with thick walls and money. Lots of money. She blinked up at an unfamiliar ceiling, all clean lines and recessed lighting. Her body was cradled in the most luxurious bed she'd ever touched, covered with sheets that probably had a thread count higher than her credit score. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed Seoul's glittering skyline, the city spread out below like scattered diamonds. This wasn't just wealth. This was power. Where? Her voice came out hoarse. You're safe. That voice again coming from somewhere to her left. She turned her head to find him, the man from the club, sitting in a chair beside the bed, watching her with those same intense eyes. Up close he was even more devastating. And terrifying. You fainted. Low blood sugar, the doctor said. When did you last eat? Meghan's mind raced, trying to piece together how she'd gone from a nightclub to what was clearly a penthouse suite. Who are you? His lips curved into the slightest smile, though his eyes remained serious. My name is Nagato. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, studying her like she was a puzzle he was determined to solve. And I think, Meghan, you and I need to have a very interesting conversation. How did he know her name? What happens when a nobody crashes into the world of the most dangerous man in the city? Stick around. This tale of forbidden passion, deadly secrets, and unbreakable bonds will have you questioning everything. Hey everyone, drop in the comments where you're watching from, your city or country. And tell me, if you fainted at a party and woke up in a mafia boss's bed, would you run for the hills or stay to uncover his secrets? Let's hear it. Meghan's survival instincts finally kicked in. She sat up too quickly and the room tilted again. Nagato's hand shot out, steadying her shoulder with a touch that was firm but surprisingly gentle. Easy, he said. The 4 fluids are helping, but you need to move slowly. That's when she noticed the thin tube trailing from her hand to a medical stand beside the bed. A private doctor, because of course this man had a private doctor, stood discreetly near the door, a professional-looking woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a face that revealed nothing. "The 4 can come out now," the doctor said in English, approaching the bed. "Your vitals are stable. I recommend eating something substantial and staying hydrated." She removed the needle with practiced efficiency and handed Meghan a card. "If you experience any dizziness or nausea in the next 24 hours, call this number." Meghan took the card with shaking fingers. "Thank you." After the doctor left, silence stretched between them. Nagato hadn't moved, still watching her with that unnerving focus. He was even more striking in the soft lighting of the bedroom, all sharp angles and controlled intensity. She noticed a thin scar along his jawline, barely visible. A ring on his right hand that looked like it could double as a weapon. "How did I get here?" Meghan asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Where's Yuna?" "My roommate. Your friend left the club shortly after you fainted. I sent one of my associates to inform her you were safe and receiving medical attention. She knows you're here." He paused. "She seemed relieved someone was taking care of you." That sounded like Yuna, practical to a fault. But it didn't explain anything. "You still haven't told me who you are." "I mean really? People don't just bring random girls who faint to penthouse suites with private doctors unless they're dangerous," Nagato finished for her. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "You're right to be cautious. I'll be honest with you, Meghan. I'm a businessman. I own shipping companies, tech firms, several art galleries in Seoul and Tokyo. I also control certain, less legitimate operations. People call me a mafia boss and they're not wrong." The word should have sent her running. Instead, she found herself frozen, captivated by his absolute candor. Most people lied. This man seemed incapable of it, or at least uninterested in trying. "Why am I here?" she asked quietly. Nagato stood, moving to the windows with the fluid grace of a predator. Against the Seoul skyline he looked like he owned the entire city. "Maybe he did. Because when I saw you across that club, something happened that I didn't think was possible." He turned back to face her. "My grandmother used to tell me a story. In our family supposedly there's a recognition, instant, primal. She said when you find your person your soul knows before your mind catches up. I always thought it was romantic nonsense. And now..." Meghan's heart was hammering. "Now I know what she meant." His gaze locked with hers again, and that same electric current from the club snapped between them. "When you collapsed I caught you. And I knew. I can't explain it rationally. But I knew. This was insane. Completely insane. She should be calling the police or the embassy or someone." Instead she heard herself say, "I felt something too. When you looked at me." Nagato's expression shifted, surprise quickly masked. "Then you understand why I couldn't just let you leave the club with strangers. Why I needed to make sure you were safe, fed, cared for. I don't even know you. Not yet." He moved closer, stopping a respectful distance from the bed. "But I'd like you to. No pressure, no obligations. Stay, have dinner with me. Let me show you that I'm not just the dangerous man people warn you about. Then if you want to leave I'll have my driver take you home. Your choice entirely." Every warning bell in Meghan's mind was ringing. This man was dangerous. He'd admitted it himself. She should walk out right now. But something in his eyes, a vulnerability carefully hidden beneath all that control, made her hesitate. And there was the undeniable fact that her body still felt weak, her stomach was growling, and she was curious. So dangerously curious. "Dinner," she agreed. "But I'm keeping my phone on, and if you try anything..." "You'll what?" He smiled, then really smiled, and it transformed his entire face. "I appreciate the spirit, Meghan. But I promise all I want is conversation. And to make sure you eat something before you faint again." Dinner turned out to be an elaborate affair served in a dining room that looked like it belonged in an architectural magazine. The table could seat 20, but Nagato had it set for 2, intimate and surprisingly unpretentious. The food was Korean with French influences, perfectly grilled galbi, delicate banchan dishes, soup that smelled like heaven. Meghan ate like she'd been starving, which she essentially had been. Nagato watched with barely concealed satisfaction, occasionally refilling her water glass or offering her another dish. They talked, carefully at first, then with growing ease. She told him about growing up in Harlem, about her grandmother's brownstone kitchen where she'd learned to paint by mixing colors to match her grandmother's descriptions of her childhood in Georgia. About choosing Seoul because she wanted to prove herself somewhere far from home, somewhere nobody knew her story or expected anything from her. He listened with complete attention, asking questions that showed he was really hearing her, not just waiting for his turn to talk. When she finally asked about him, he was surprisingly forthcoming. My family has controlled certain territories in Seoul for 3 generations, Nagato said, swirling wine in his glass. My grandfather built the foundation during the chaos after the war. My father expanded into legitimate businesses while maintaining the underground operations. I inherited everything when he was killed 7 years ago. I'm sorry, Meghan said softly. Don't be. He wasn't a good man. Nagato's jaw tightened. He was cruel, especially to my mother. I vowed I'd be different. Stronger, yes. Ruthless when necessary. But never cruel. Is that possible? In your world? I'm still finding out. His eyes met hers again. But tonight, having dinner with a brilliant art student who looks at me like I'm just a man, not a monster or a myth, this feels more real than anything has in years. After dinner, Nagato led her to another room, a private gallery space filled with artwork. And there, hanging on the walls, were 3 of her paintings. Pieces she'd submitted to a group show last month, humble works she'd priced at $200 each, desperate for any sale. How? She breathed. I attended that show, Nagato said. 3 weeks ago. I bought these under a proxy name. I was going to contact you about commissioning more work, but then I saw you at the club tonight and... He shrugged. Fate has a sense of humor. Meghan stared at her own work, hanging in a space surrounded by what looked like original pieces worth hundreds of thousands. Why these? They're not my best. They're honest, he interrupted. This one, he gestured to a painting of a Harlem street scene at dusk. You can feel the loneliness and the longing. The way you capture light, it's extraordinary. He pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, then showed her the screen. I'm transferring $50,000 for these 3 pieces. That's what they're worth to me. That's insane. Meghan's voice came out strangled. I can't. You can and you will. Consider it an investment. In a year when you're famous, I'll say I discovered you. His smile was teasing, but his eyes were serious. Take the money, Meghan. Buy food. Pay your rent. Create more art. Let me help you. She should refuse. Should be insulted even. Instead, she felt tears pricking her eyes. $50,000. She could eat. She could focus on her work instead of taking extra shifts at the campus cafe. She could breathe. Why? She whispered. Nagato reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a stray curl behind her ear. His fingers lingered just a moment against her cheek. Because even if nothing else comes of tonight, I want to know that the woman who made my heart restart is safe, fed, and creating the art the world needs to see. Standing in that gallery, Seoul spread out behind them through the windows, Meghan felt her entire world shift. This was dangerous. This was probably the worst decision she'd ever made. But when Nagato offered to have his driver take her home, she heard herself asking, "Can I come back? Tomorrow maybe. To see the rest of your collection." The smile that spread across his face was answer enough. What would you do if a mafia boss like Nagato started pursuing you after saving your life? Accept his help or walk away? Share in the comments. The next 3 weeks became a beautiful, terrifying blur. Nagato was true to his word. A driver appeared at her apartment the next evening, bringing her to dinner at a private restaurant where they talked until midnight. Then came a gallery opening where he introduced her to art dealers and collectors, his hand proprietarily on the small of her back. A private tour of his company's tech headquarters, where she saw the legitimate empire he'd built alongside the shadow one. Gifts started arriving, expensive but thoughtful. A professional set of oil paints and colors she'd mentioned wanting to try. First editions of books by her favorite authors. A coat for Seoul's brutal winter, cashmere so soft it felt like sin against her skin. Meghan knew she was falling into something she couldn't control. Her friends warned her. Yuna pulled her aside after seeing Nagato's car outside their building. Do you know what people say about him? He's not just rich, Meghan. He's dangerous. Like people disappear dangerous. He's been nothing but respectful, Meghan insisted, but even she heard the defensiveness in her voice. The truth was more complicated. Yes, Nagato was dangerous. She'd seen glimpses of it. The way his men moved around him with military precision, how conversations stopped when he entered rooms, the scar on his ribs he'd revealed when his shirt rode up, evidence of a life lived in violence. But with her he was different. Gentle. Patient. He asked about her day, her art, her dreams. He listened like every word mattered. He made her feel seen in a way no one ever had. Their 4th dinner together was at his penthouse, prepared by a private chef. After the meal, Nagato led her to the terrace despite the cold. Seoul glittered below them, a city of 10 million lights, and somehow she felt like they were the only two people in existence. "Tell me something true," Nagato said, handing her a glass of wine. "Something you've never told anyone." Meghan considered deflecting, but his eyes held that same vulnerability she'd glimpsed that first night. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm good enough. If I really have talent or if I'm just fooling myself. My father never understood why I didn't become a doctor or lawyer like he wanted. He said art was a hobby, not a future. Part of me is still trying to prove him wrong. And the other part? Knows he might be right." Nagato moved closer, his body heat cutting through the winter chill. "Your father is wrong. I've been around art my entire life, collecting it, selling it, understanding what moves people. Your work has something rare. Not just technical skill but soul. You paint with the kind of honesty that makes people uncomfortable because it reflects their own hidden truths back at them." "That sounds lonely," Meghan said softly. "Always being the mirror." "It is." He touched her hand, tentative like he was handling something precious. "That's why you need someone who can see you, not just your reflection. Someone who understands what it costs to show the world that kind of truth." "Is that what you do?" She turned her hand over, lacing her fingers with his. "Show truth. I show power. Control. Fear when necessary." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "But with you, I just want to be honest. I want you to know the real man, not the reputation." "Then tell me something true," she echoed his earlier words. "Something you've never told anyone." Nagato was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "I'm tired. Tired of the violence, the constant vigilance, the knowledge that any day someone might try to kill me or the people I care about. I inherited this empire, and sometimes I wish I'd had the courage to walk away. But too many people depend on me, families who need the protection, the jobs, the order I provide. So I stay and I become harder every year, and I wonder if one day I'll wake up and realize I've become my father after all." The raw vulnerability in his admission struck her like a physical blow. Without thinking, Meghan reached up and cupped his face, turning him to look at her. "You're not your father. You couldn't be. Everything you've done for me, the respect, the care, the way you actually listen, that's not cruelty. That's someone who still has softness inside, even if you've had to bury it to survive." "Meghan?" He breathed her name like a prayer. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Scared of what I'm feeling. Scared this is all moving too fast. Scared that in your world, there's no room for someone like me." "There's room," Nagato said fiercely. "I'll make room. I'll burn the whole world down if that's what it takes to keep you safe." "That's not romantic," she said, but her voice shook. "That's terrifying." "I know." His forehead touched hers and she felt his breath against her lips. "But it's the truth. From the moment I caught you, something in me shifted. You're mine, Meghan. Not in the way I own businesses or control territory. In the way that matters. Soul deep. And I think I'm yours too." The kiss, when it came, felt inevitable. Soft at first, testing, then deepening into something that made Meghan forget about the cold, the danger, every reason she should pull away. Nagato kissed like he did everything else, with complete focus and intensity, like she was the center of his universe. His hands cradled her face with surprising tenderness, and when they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she saw the same wonder in his eyes that she felt burning through her veins. "Stay tonight," he whispered. "Not like that. Just stay. Let me hold you. Let me wake up knowing you're safe." She should say no. Should maintain boundaries. Instead she nodded. They slept in his massive bed, Meghan tucked against his chest, his arms wrapped around her like she was something precious he was protecting from the world. It was the most secure she'd ever felt and the most dangerous all at once. The next morning, everything changed. Meghan woke to raised voices in another room. Nagato was gone from the bed. She pulled on one of his shirts and followed the sound to his office, where a woman who could only be his sister stood in the doorway, fury radiating from every line of her elegant frame. "Insane, Nagato. You bring her into our world, into our home, and you think there won't be consequences." "Minacio," Nagato's voice was hard. "Don't menace me." His sister's eyes blazed. "Park's crew already knows about her. They're asking questions. How long before they decide the easiest way to hurt you is through her?" That's when Minacio noticed Meghan in the doorway. Her expression shifted from anger to assessment. "You must be the art student." She looked Meghan up and down, taking in the borrowed shirt, the tumbled hair. "Let me guess, you think you can save him? Think love conquers all?" "Minacio, that's enough," Nagato snapped. No, it's not. Minacio turned fully to Meghan. I actually like you from what I've heard. That's why I'm warning you now, leave. Go back to America, transfer schools, disappear. Because staying with my brother means painting a target on your back. It means living with the knowledge that any moment, someone might use you to destroy him. Is that the life you want? Meghan's mouth went dry. She looked at Nagato, who stood rigid, jaw clenched, not denying a word his sister said. Is she right? Meghan asked him quietly. Yes, he said simply. The honesty hurt more than a lie would have. Everything she said is true. Being with me puts you in danger. I should have thought about that before I let this happen. Let this happen? Meghan felt anger spark. Like I'm something that just happened to you? I made choices too, Nagato. I came back. I stayed. I kissed you. And now you need to choose again, Minacio said, not unkindly. With clear eyes this time. Knowing what it costs. Meghan looked between them, Minacio protective and fierce, Nagato standing like a man waiting for execution. She thought about Harlem, about her grandmother who'd always told her to follow her heart but use her head. She thought about the safety of her old life, the simplicity. Then she thought about Nagato's laugh when she told a terrible joke at dinner. The way he described her paintings with more insight than any critic. How she felt like her best self when he looked at her with those intense eyes that saw everything. I'm not leaving, she said. Nagato's head snapped up. Meghan. I'm not leaving, she repeated, stronger. Not because I'm naive or because I think love fixes everything. But because I get to choose my own life and I choose this. I choose you. Whatever comes with it. Minacio studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right. Then I'll teach you how to stay alive. Minacio became an unexpected ally and friend. Over the following weeks, she taught Meghan the rules of their world, how to read situations, recognize threats, understand the hierarchy that governed Nagato's organization. She was brilliant and terrifying in equal measure, running several of the family's legitimate businesses while also serving as Nagato's most trusted advisor. My brother has always been too soft-hearted, Minacio said during one of their lunches at a cafe near Meghan's campus. After our father died, everyone expected him to be even more ruthless to prove himself. Instead, he started reforming things. Reducing violence, investing in communities, trying to transition the family toward legitimate operations. Some of the old guard respect him for it. Others see it as weakness. Park's crew? Meghan asked, referencing the name she'd heard that morning in Nagato's office. Park Jae-sung runs the rival organization. He and our father had an understanding. Territories respected, conflicts negotiated. But Park sees Nagato's reforms as an opportunity. He's been pushing boundaries, testing responses. It's only a matter of time before things escalate. Minacio's expression was grim. That's why you're a complication. Park will use anything he can to gain advantage. Despite the warnings, Meghan's relationship with Nagato deepened. He introduced her to his inner circle. Men who'd protected him since childhood, who now protected her by extension. She met his mother, an elegant woman with sad eyes who squeezed Meghan's hand and whispered, "You make him smile. Thank you for that." Her art flourished in unexpected ways. With financial stability from Nagato's purchase, she could focus entirely on her work. Gallery owners who'd ignored her before suddenly returned calls. A prestigious show invited her to submit pieces. Nagato insisted he'd pulled no strings and maybe he hadn't directly, but his name opened doors whether he meant it to or not. They fought about it one evening in her tiny studio apartment. Meghan had insisted on keeping the place despite Nagato's offers to move her somewhere safer, more comfortable. "I need something that's mine," she told him. "Not something you've given me." Tonight, though, the studio felt suffocating as they faced each other across her paint-splattered work table. "I didn't ask you to interfere," Meghan said, frustration making her voice sharp. "That gallery invitation, did you have something to do with it?" "No," Nagato said, but his jaw was tight. "But even if I did, would it matter? Your work is good enough. I'd just be accelerating the inevitable recognition. That's not the point. I need to know I'm succeeding because of my talent, not because I'm sleeping with you." "We haven't slept together," Nagato pointed out, which was true. They'd kissed, touched, spent nights holding each other, but hadn't crossed that final line. "And you're succeeding because you're brilliant. Stop looking for ways to sabotage your own happiness, Meghan." "I'm not." She stopped because maybe he was right. Maybe she was so used to struggle that success felt wrong, unearned. "I just need to know this is real. All of it." Nagato moved around the table, backing her against the wall where her latest painting dried. His hands framed her face, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. You want to know what's real? This is real. He kissed her harder than before, and she tasted frustration and desire and something deeper. The way I think about you constantly is real. How I rearranged my entire security protocol because I need to see you every day is real. The fact that I'm terrified something will happen to you because of me is real. Nagato. I love you, he said, and the words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning. I've loved you since I caught you before you hit that nightclub floor. Maybe I'm insane. Maybe it's too fast. But it's real, Meghan. More real than anything in my life has ever been. Tears burned her eyes. This is crazy. We barely know each other. It's only been a few weeks. I know your favorite color is that specific shade of blue right before sunset. I know you hum when you're painting and you're happy. I know you take your coffee with too much sugar and you're afraid of disappointing people, but you'll fight for what you believe in. I know you talk to your grandmother's picture when you're stressed. I know the exact face you make when you're about to say something you think I won't want to hear. His thumb brushed away a tear that had escaped. So maybe I don't know everything. But I know enough. I know you're it for me. I'm scared, she whispered. Good. I'm terrified. He rested his forehead against hers. But I'm more scared of losing you. Of not trying. Of living the rest of my life wondering what could have been. Meghan pulled him down into another kiss, this one softer, deeper, filled with everything she couldn't put into words. When they finally broke apart, she said, I love you too. I don't know if that makes me brave or stupid. Brave? He insisted. Definitely brave. They made love for the first time on her second-hand couch, Nagato treating her body like something sacred, worshipping every curve and line with his hands and mouth until she was trembling beneath him. It was passionate and tender and intense, exactly like everything else between them. Afterward, wrapped in her grandmother's quilt, Meghan felt complete in a way she'd never experienced. Stay, she whispered against his chest. Always, he promised, and she chose to believe him. The next morning, reality crashed back in. Meghan woke to Nagato on the phone, his voice low and dangerous as he spoke rapid Korean. She understood enough to catch words like warehouse and territory and response required. When he ended the call, his expression was carefully blank. I have to handle something today. Business. The dangerous kind, she stated, not asking. Yes. He sat on the edge of the bed, taking her hand. I'll have Minacio stay with you. And security outside. Just for today. Nagato. Don't ask me not to go. This is my responsibility. People depend on me to handle this. She wanted to argue, to beg him to choose her over his dangerous world. Instead, she squeezed his hand. Come back to me. Always, he repeated, but this time the promise felt fragile. He kissed her goodbye at the door, lingering like he was memorizing the moment. Meghan watched from her window as his car pulled away, escorted by 2 additional vehicles. Minacio arrived minutes later, her presence both reassuring and terrifying. He'll be fine, Minacio said, settling onto the couch with her laptop. Nagato survived worse than territorial disputes with Park's crew. But the day dragged endlessly. Meghan tried to paint, but her hands shook. She tried to study, but the words blurred. Finally, at dusk, her phone rang. It's done. Nagato's voice was rough, exhausted. I'm coming to you. When he arrived an hour later, Meghan saw the toll the day had taken. His suit was rumpled, a bruise darkening his jaw, his eyes haunted by whatever he'd had to do. She pulled him inside and he collapsed on her couch, looking suddenly younger and more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. Talk to me, she said softly, sitting beside him. I try to minimize violence, he said after a long silence. Try to negotiate, find solutions that don't involve bloodshed. But today, Park's men ambushed one of our warehouses. 3 of my men were wounded. We had to respond, had to show we won't be pushed. So I did. I hurt people, Meghan. That's who I am. That's part of who you are, she corrected. You're also the man who makes sure wounded men get the best medical care. Who's trying to reform your organization. Who looks at art like it's salvation. She took his bruised hand gently. You're not defined by your worst moments, Nagato. You're defined by what you choose when you have the power to choose. You see the best in me, he said, wonder in his voice. I see the truth in you, she countered. The complicated, difficult, beautiful truth. They held each other as darkness fell over Seoul, 2 people from different worlds trying to build something real in the space between. The next month brought an intensity to their relationship that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Nagato was increasingly pulled into conflicts with Park's organization, each skirmish more dangerous than the last. But when he was with Meghan, he transformed, shedding the hardness, allowing himself to be vulnerable in ways she suspected no one else saw. They fell into a rhythm. Mornings, Meghan painted in her studio while Nagato handled legitimate business from his office. Afternoons, they'd meet for lunch or gallery visits, normal couple things that felt almost surreal given the armed security that now followed her everywhere. Evenings belonged to them. Dinners, conversations, making love with an urgency that spoke to their awareness of how fragile their happiness was. Meghan's art show opened to surprising acclaim. Critics praised her raw emotional honesty and unique perspective that bridges cultures and experiences. 3 pieces sold for significant amounts. Nagato attended the opening but stayed in the background, letting her have the spotlight. Watching him watch her, pride and love naked on his usually controlled face, Meghan felt her heart swell almost painfully. But the danger was escalating. Minicio briefed her on the situation during their weekly lunch. Park is getting desperate. Our reforms are working, which means his old-school methods look increasingly outdated. He's losing allies, territory, respect. That makes him unpredictable. What does that mean for us? It means you never go anywhere without security. It means we don't discuss certain things over phone. It means understanding that any day this fragile peace could shatter. Minicio's expression was grave. I need you to be realistic, Meghan. If it comes down to choosing between his organization and you, Nagato will choose you. And that could get people killed, people who've depended on this family for protection their entire lives. The weight of that responsibility settled on Meghan's shoulders. She wasn't just choosing a relationship, she was affecting countless lives she'd never even met. That night, she brought it up with Nagato. They were in his penthouse, rain lashing against the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city below obscured by storm clouds. Nagato was cooking, something he did to relax, he told her, moving around the kitchen with the same precision he brought to everything. Minicio said if you had to choose between me and your organization, you'd choose me, Meghan said, watching him slice vegetables with disturbing expertise. His knife stilled. She's right. That's not fair to all those people who depend on you. Life isn't fair. He set the knife down and turned to face her fully. I've given my entire adult life to this organization. I've bled for it, killed for it, sacrificed any hope of normalcy for it. But you're the first thing that's ever been just mine. Not inherited, not obligated. Mine because I chose you and you chose me. And if that choice costs lives? Then I'll carry that weight, he said simply. But I won't give you up. I can't, Meghan. You've become as essential as breathing. She should argue. Should insist he couldn't make that kind of choice. Instead, she crossed to him and kissed him with all the desperate love and fear churning inside her. Then we find a way where you don't have to choose. We end this conflict with Park. We finish your reforms. We make it work. My optimistic artist, he murmured against her lips, but she heard the hope beneath the teasing. That night, they made love with a new intensity, both aware they were racing against time. Nagato was rougher than usual, his control slipping as he buried himself in her again and again, whispering her name like a prayer. Meghan met him with equal passion, nails raking down his back, claiming him as thoroughly as he claimed her. Afterward, tangled in his sheets, he traced the curve of her hip idly. Move in with me. Meghan's breath caught. Nagato. I know it's fast. I know you value your independence. But I need you close. Need to know you're safe behind security I control. And selfishly, I want to wake up with you every morning, come home to you every night. I want to build a life with you, Meghan. A real life, not just stolen moments between crises. She thought about her tiny studio, the independence she'd guarded so fiercely. Then she thought about this. His arms around her, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear, the sense of coming home she felt in his presence. Okay. He sounded stunned. Yes, I'll move in. But I'm keeping my studio for working. I need space that's just mine for creating. Done. He kissed the top of her head. Anything you need. Always. The happiness lasted exactly 3 days. Meghan was at her studio, packing up supplies to move to the penthouse, when Minjo burst through the door, face pale. We need to go. Now. What's wrong? Park knows about the shipment. Nagato's moving tonight. Someone in our organization leaked information. Minjo was already pulling Meghan toward the door. He's walking into a trap and we can't reach him. Phone communications are compromised. Meghan's heart stopped. Where is he? The Port District. And we're going there with every available man we can mobilize. The drive to the port was a blur of rain and flashing lights and Minacio barking orders into her phone in rapid Korean. Meghan's mind raced with terrifying possibilities. She'd seen the scars on Nagato's body, heard the stories of past conflicts. He'd survived so much, but everyone's luck ran out eventually. They arrived to chaos. Gunfire echoed across the shipping containers. Men in dark clothing moved like shadows. Minacio shoved Meghan behind an SUV. "Stay here. Don't move." But Meghan couldn't just hide while Nagato was in danger. She crept forward, using containers for cover, following the sounds of fighting. Then she saw him, Nagato, surrounded by 4 of Park's men, his own security down or scattered. Blood streaked his face from a cut above his eye. He was holding his own, but the odds were impossible. Without thinking, Meghan grabbed a metal pipe from the ground and swung it at the nearest attacker with all her strength. The man went down with a grunt of surprise. Nagato's head whipped around, his expression transforming from focus to horror. "Meghan. No." Everything happened too fast. One of Park's men grabbed her, putting a knife to her throat. Nagato froze, hands raised. The man holding her said something in Korean, laughing. Then Minacio appeared from nowhere, a gun in her hand, and the situation dissolved into violence so fast Meghan couldn't track it. When the dust settled, Park's men were down or fleeing. Minacio was calling for medical backup and cleanup crews. And Nagato had Meghan crushed against his chest, his entire body shaking. "You could have been killed," he said against her hair, his voice raw. "You could have. But I wasn't. We're okay. You're never coming near this again. Never. I don't care what I have to do, you're staying away from." "You don't get to make that decision alone," she interrupted, pulling back to look at him. "I know what I signed up for. I'm not some fragile thing you need to lock away. You're everything to me," he said fiercely. "Everything, Meghan. If something happened to you because of my world, then we change your world," she said. "Together. No more half measures. You want out of this life? Then we find a way out." He stared at her like she just said something revolutionary. Maybe she had. The aftermath of the port ambush shifted something fundamental. Nagato called a meeting with his entire organization. Everyone from his most trusted advisors to the foot soldiers who ran street-level operations. Meghan wasn't supposed to be there, but he insisted, wanting transparency. "I'm done," he announced, standing before 50 men who'd followed his family for generations. "Done with the violence, the territory wars, the blood. We're going completely legitimate. Anyone who wants out, who can't handle that transition, will receive severance and references for work elsewhere. No hard feelings. But I'm not sacrificing more lives for an empire built on fear." The room erupted in argument. Some supported him. Others called it suicide, betrayal, weakness. Through it all, Nagato stood firm, Meghan at his side, a united front. That night, curled in bed, he whispered against her skin, "Thank you." "For what?" "For making me brave enough to choose the life I actually want. For showing me there's more than just survival." Meghan kissed him softly. "We're going to build something beautiful. I promise." She had no idea how soon that promise would be tested. The transition was harder than either of them anticipated. Half of Nagato's organization accepted the new direction. The other half quietly defected to Park or other rivals, seeing Nagato's reforms as fatal weakness. Revenue from legitimate businesses was strong, but losing the underground operations meant cutting payroll, which meant families losing income. Nagato aged years and weeks, the stress carving new lines around his eyes. Meghan supported him however she could, managing logistics for the legitimate businesses, using her art connections to help establish the family's gallery operations, being his refuge when the weight became too much. 2 months into the transition, Meghan woke feeling nauseous. She attributed it to stress until the nausea persisted for a week. Minacio, ever observant, handed her a pregnancy test one morning with a knowing look. "You're kidding," Meghan said. "Just take it. 2 lines. Positive." Meghan stared at the test in her hands, emotions warring inside her. She was 24, her career just beginning to take off, in a relationship with a man still navigating out of organized crime. This was terrible timing. This was completely unplanned. This was a baby, she whispered, and felt joy bloom unexpectedly through the fear. Telling Nagato that evening was terrifying. They were having dinner in the penthouse, and Meghan pushed food around her plate nervously until he noticed. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately. "I'm pregnant." Silence. Nagato went absolutely still, chopsticks frozen halfway to his mouth. Then he carefully set them down. "Pregnant? As in, having a baby?" "Yes." She forced herself to meet his eyes. I know this is terrible timing. I know we haven't even discussed. Marry me. Whether you even want children, and we should probably— Wait, what? Marry me, Nagato repeated, and she realized his eyes were bright with unshed tears. Not because of the baby, though I'm terrified and thrilled about that, but because I want you as my wife. Want to build a family with you. Want everything with you. That's the hormones talking, Meghan said, but her voice shook. That's me talking. Meghan, you're already my family. The baby just makes it official. He came around the table and knelt beside her chair, taking her hands. I love you. I want to marry you, raise our child together, build the life we've been working toward. Say yes. We're crazy, she whispered. Completely insane, he agreed. So say yes anyway. Yes, she breathed, and he kissed her with such tenderness she started crying, hormones and happiness and fear all tangled together. The peace lasted exactly 2 weeks. Meghan was at a gallery showing with Minacio, examining potential pieces for their new gallery venture, when 3 men in suits approached. Something about them set off alarm bells, too casual, eyes too sharp. Miss Carter, one said in accented English. Please come with us quietly and no one gets hurt. Minacio moved to intervene, but one of the men had a gun concealed against his body. Don't. Park Jae-sung would like to speak with your brother's fiancée. We can do this easy or hard. If you touch her, Minacio started. Then your brother will know what it feels like to lose something precious, the man finished. He's cost Park dearly. Time to balance the scales. Meghan's mind raced. She was pregnant. She couldn't risk violence. But letting them take her meant— Minacio, she said quietly. Tell Nagato I love him. Tell him. No, Minacio said fiercely. You fight. You survive. That's what we do. But the men were already moving, grabbing Meghan's arms. She thought about struggling, about the baby, about all the self-defense Minacio had taught her. In the end, she went quietly, praying Nagato would find her in time. They took her to a warehouse in a part of Seoul she didn't recognize. Park Jae-sung was older than she expected, maybe 60, with cold eyes and a smile that never reached them. He sat in an expensive chair like it was a throne, guards flanking him. The famous Meghan Carter, he said in perfect English. The woman who made Nagato soft. Do you know how much your existence has cost me? Territory, men, reputation, all because your lover decided to play at being legitimate. Let me go, Meghan said, trying to keep her voice steady. This won't end well for you. Oh, I think it will. Nagato will come for you, he's predictable that way. And when he does, we'll be waiting. He'll die here, and his organization will crumble, and things will return to how they should be. Park leaned forward. Your bait, my dear. Nothing personal. Meghan's hand went instinctively to her still flat stomach. She had to survive this. Had to protect her baby. Nagato's stronger than you think. Love makes men weak, Park said dismissively. Always has. Hours passed. They kept her in a small room, guarded but not mistreated. Meghan tried to stay calm, conserve her strength. She thought about Nagato, about the baby, about the life they'd been building. She refused to let it end here. When the attack came, it was sudden and overwhelming. Explosions rocked the warehouse. Gunfire erupted. Meghan's guards abandoned their post, rushing toward the fight. She took the opportunity to hide behind crates, making herself as small as possible. Then she heard his voice, Nagato, shouting orders in Korean, closer than she'd dared hope. She called out, and moments later he was there, pulling her into his arms with bruising force. I've got you, he said against her hair. I've got you. You're safe. The baby, she started. Baby? His eyes went wide. You're pregnant. Didn't Minacio tell you? She said you had important news but wouldn't say what. His hand went to her stomach, protective. We need to get you out of here. Now. But as they moved toward the exit, Park appeared, gun raised. Not so fast. Everything slowed down. Nagato pushed Meghan behind him. Park fired. Nagato lurched sideways, blood blooming across his shoulder. He returned fire and Park went down. Then Minacio was there with reinforcements and the warehouse became chaos. They got Nagato to a hospital, not a public one, but a private facility Minacio had on retainer. The bullet had missed anything vital, but he'd lost blood. Meghan sat beside his hospital bed, holding his hand, tears streaming down her face. You scared me, she whispered when he finally opened his eyes hours later. Sorry, he said groggily, pain medication making his words thick. Had to protect my family. Your family is fine, she assured him. Scared out of our minds but fine. Park? Dead. It's over. Minacio appeared in the doorway. His organization is scattered. The remaining crews have agreed to peace terms. It's finally over, Nagato. He looked at Meghan, then at his sister, and something in his expression eased. Then we can start over. Build something real. Something real, Meghan echoed, bringing his hand to her stomach. For all three of us. Nagato's smile, despite the pain, was radiant. Recovery was slow but steady. Nagato's shoulder healed over the following weeks, and the doctor cleared him with warnings to avoid stress, which made everyone who knew him laugh. Stress was his default state. But with Park's organization dismantled and peace agreements in place with the remaining crews, life began to take on a surreal normalcy. Meghan's pregnancy progressed without complications. Morning sickness gave way to a glowing second trimester. Her belly swelled, and Nagato became hilariously protective, hovering constantly until she had to physically push him away so she could paint. "I'm pregnant, not made of glass," she told him one afternoon in her studio. "You're carrying my child," he countered, hands gentle on her stomach. "That makes you the most precious thing in the world." Smooth talker. But she leaned into his touch, feeling the baby flutter between them. "Did you feel that?" His expression transformed into pure wonder. "That's our baby?" "That's our baby." They decided to marry before the birth. A small, intimate ceremony that blended Korean and African American traditions. Minacio helped plan everything with unexpected enthusiasm, while Meghan's mother flew in from New York, initially suspicious of Nagato but gradually won over by his obvious devotion to her daughter. The ceremony took place in a private garden, cherry blossoms falling like snow. Meghan wore a hanbok in deep blue silk for the Korean portion of the ceremony, then changed into a cream dress that accommodated her 6-month belly for the Western vows. Nagato looked devastating in traditional clothing, then later in a perfectly tailored suit. When they exchanged vows, Meghan's voice shook with emotion. "You caught me when I was falling in more ways than one. You saw me when I felt invisible. You gave me safety and danger, comfort and challenge, stability and adventure, all at once. I promise to be your shelter when the world is too much, your partner in building the life we want, and your reminder that love isn't weakness but the greatest strength we have." Nagato's vows were simpler but no less powerful. "I was lost before you. Living but not alive. You taught me that there's more to existence than survival. You made me want to be better, do better, build better. I promise to protect you and our family with everything I am, to choose you every day, and to never let you forget how extraordinary you are." There wasn't a dry eye in the garden, including Minacio's, though she'd deny it later. The reception was held at Nagato's penthouse, transformed into a celebration space. His mother cried happy tears and hugged Meghan repeatedly. Meghan's mother cornered Nagato and issued warnings that made him pale, then grin and promised to always treasure her daughter. Minacio gave a toast that was both touching and threatening, warning Nagato that if he ever hurt Meghan, sister or not, she'd make him regret it. To new beginnings, Minacio raised her glass. To choosing love over fear. To the family we're born into and the family we choose. To family, everyone echoed. That night, after the guests left and the city glittered below them, Nagato and Meghan stood on the terrace, his arms wrapped around her from behind, hands resting on her pregnant belly. "We did it," she said softly. "We're actually married." "Mrs. Kim," he tested the name. "Though you don't have to take my name if—" "I like it," she interrupted. "Meghan Kim. It suits me. Everything suits you." He kissed her neck. "You're beautiful, pregnant. Radiant." "I'm huge," she countered but smiled. "You're perfect." Life settled into a new rhythm. Nagato's legitimate businesses thrived, the galleries especially, with Meghan's expertise helping to establish them as premier destinations for contemporary art. She continued creating, her work taking on new dimensions as she processed everything they'd been through. Critics called her latest series raw and redemptive, and museums started acquiring pieces. The baby preparations consumed them. They converted one of the penthouse bedrooms into a nursery, decorated in soft yellows and greens. Nagato assembled furniture with comical frustration, cursing in Korean when the crib instructions made no sense. Meghan painted a mural on one wall, a garden scene with hidden details that would reveal themselves as the child grew. "You're going to be an amazing mother," Nagato said, watching her add final touches to the mural. "We're going to be amazing parents," she corrected. Together. Minacio threw Meghan a baby shower that was somehow both elegant and practical. Meghan's art school friends mixed with Nagato's business associates, creating interesting conversations. Her mother bonded with Nagato's mother over shared hopes for the grandchild. It felt surreal and wonderful and exactly right. But there were still complications. Some members of the old organization resented the changes, the loss of power and profit. Anonymous threats arrived occasionally, quickly traced and neutralized by Nagato's security team. A rival crew in Busan made noises about testing Seoul's new peacetime leadership. Nagato handled each challenge with the same controlled intensity he brought to everything, but Meghan saw the toll it took. "Come to bed," she said one night, finding him in his office at 2 a.m., reviewing security reports. "In a minute. There's a situation in now." She took the papers from his hands. "Whatever it is can wait until morning. You need sleep. The baby and I need you healthy." He let her pull him to bed, curling around her and the baby protectively. "Thank you," he whispered in the darkness. "For what?" "For not letting me disappear into work. For reminding me what matters." "Always," she promised. At 38 weeks, Meghan was huge, uncomfortable, and convinced she'd be pregnant forever. Nagato treated her like she might shatter any second, which was sweet but exhausting. She was waddling through the penthouse trying to ease back pain when her water broke. "Nagato," she called, trying to stay calm despite panic rising in her chest. He appeared instantly, took one look at the puddle on the floor and went pale. "Is that my water? The baby's coming. We need to go to the hospital." What followed was controlled chaos. Nagato called their doctor, Minnesio, and half the security team in under 2 minutes. The drive to the private hospital was simultaneously too fast and too slow. Contractions were intensifying, and Meghan focused on breathing through them while Nagato held her hand and looked terrified. "You faced down rival crews without blinking," she panted between contractions. "But this scares you?" "This is scarier than anything I've ever faced," he admitted. "If something happens to you..." "Nothing's happening to me. Women have been doing this forever. We've got this." Labor was brutal. 14 hours of pain that made everything they'd survived feel insignificant by comparison. Nagato stayed beside her the entire time, letting her squeeze his hand until she was sure she was breaking bones, whispering encouragement in English and Korean, looking more helpless than she'd ever seen him. Finally, at 6:47 a.m., their daughter entered the world with a fierce cry that made them both weep with relief. She was perfect, tiny and wrinkled and utterly beautiful. The nurse placed her on Meghan's chest, and Meghan felt her entire world realign around this new life. "We have a daughter," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Nagato touched the baby's tiny hand with one finger, his expression full of wonder and terror. "She's so small." "She's perfect," Meghan said. "Absolutely perfect." They named her Amara Jiwoo, Amara meaning grace in Swahili, Jiwoo meaning wisdom in Korean. A name that honored both their heritages, that spoke to the life they'd built together. Watching Nagato hold their daughter for the first time, this powerful man who commanded an empire, reduced to odd silence by 7 pounds of baby, Meghan felt complete in a way she'd never imagined possible. "Thank you," he said, looking up at her with tears in his eyes. "For what?" "For choosing me. For giving me this. For making my life make sense." "We chose each other," she corrected. "That's what makes it work." The first months of parenthood were exhausting and joyful in equal measure. Amara was a good baby, relatively speaking, but still required constant attention. Nagato, surprisingly, took to fatherhood with the same intensity he brought to everything else. He changed diapers without complaint, did 3 a.m. feedings, and could calm Amara's crying with a particular combination of rocking and humming that seemed to work like magic. "You're a natural," Meghan said one night, watching him sway gently with their daughter against his chest. "I'm terrified I'll break her," he admitted. "She's so small, so fragile. She's tougher than she looks. She's ours, remember?" Life found a new rhythm. Meghan painted during Amara's naps, her work taking on new dimensions as motherhood changed her perspective. Nagato split time between his businesses and family, having restructured his schedule to allow maximum time at home. Minnesio was a devoted aunt, showing up with expensive gifts and gentle lectures about proper childcare. But the peace was fragile. 6 months after Amara's birth, new threats emerged. A crew from Tokyo, emboldened by rumors that Nagato had gone completely soft, started making moves into Seoul territory. Small things at first: delayed shipments, missing payments, disrespected agreements. Then it escalated to intimidation, violence against Nagato's remaining associates. Meghan could see the conflict tearing at him. He'd worked so hard to leave the violence behind, but his people were being hurt because others saw his peace as weakness. "What are you going to do?" she asked one evening after Amara was asleep, finding him on the terrace, tension radiating from every line of his body. "I don't know," he admitted. "If I respond with force, I'm back to being what I tried to leave behind. If I don't, more people get hurt and eventually they'll come after you and Amara. So we find a third option," Meghan said. "You're brilliant at strategy. There has to be a way to end this without becoming who you used to be." Over the following weeks, Nagato worked with Minasio to develop a response that was decisive without being violent. They documented every violation, built legal cases, leveraged connections with law enforcement for raids on illegal operations. They offered generous terms to Tokyo crew members willing to defect. They demonstrated that Seoul's peace came from strength, not weakness. But the Tokyo boss, a man named Tanaka, wasn't interested in peace. He wanted Nagato's territory, his businesses, his reputation. And he was willing to do anything to get them. The attack came without warning. Minasio was driving home from a business meeting when her car was forced off the road by another vehicle. She survived, but barely, critical condition, multiple surgeries needed. The message was clear: they could reach anyone anytime. Nagato transformed into someone Meghan hadn't seen before. The businessman disappeared, replaced by the Mafia boss he'd been trying to leave behind. His eyes went cold, his movements precise, his voice deadly calm as he issued orders in Korean too rapid for Meghan to follow. "You're going to war," she said quietly, holding Amara close. "Yes." He looked at her, and she saw rage and pain warring in his expression. "They hurt my sister. They threatened my family. I can't let that stand." "I know." And she did. This was the man she'd married, capable of tenderness and terrible violence in equal measure. "Just come back to us." "Always," he promised, but this time it felt like a vow to the universe itself. The next 2 weeks were nightmare territory. Nagato coordinated a response that was surgical and devastating. He didn't just go after Tanaka's operations, he dismantled them systematically, using every resource at his disposal. Legal pressure on Tanaka's legitimate businesses. Strategic alliances with other crews who resented Tokyo's expansion. And yes, targeted violence against Tanaka's key operations. Meghan stayed at the penthouse with Amara, surrounded by security that had tripled. She painted furiously, channeling fear and anger into her work. She visited Minasio in the hospital every day, sitting beside her bed and talking about everything and nothing, willing her to wake up. When Minasio finally regained consciousness after 8 days, her first words were, "How many?" "How many what?" Meghan asked, relief flooding through her. "How many of our people did Tanaka hurt while I was out?" "None." Nagato made sure of it. Minasio closed her eyes. "Good. He's learning. Violence when necessary, protection always." The war with Tanaka's crew reached its climax in a confrontation at one of Tanaka's warehouses. Nagato led the operation himself, something that terrified Meghan but which she understood was necessary. He needed to show strength, prove that Seoul's peace wasn't pacifism. Tanaka didn't survive. The official story was that he died in a warehouse fire during a police raid on illegal weapons. The truth was more complicated, but the result was the same. His organization crumbled without him and the surviving members sued for peace. When Nagato came home that night, he went straight to the nursery where Meghan was rocking Amara. He stood in the doorway looking exhausted and older than his years. "It's done," he said simply. Meghan transferred Amara to her crib and went to him, pulling him into her arms. He collapsed against her and she felt him shake with silent sobs. "I tried," he whispered. "Tried to be different. Tried to build something better. And I still ended up back there in the violence." "You protected your family," Meghan said fiercely. "You protected people who couldn't protect themselves. That's not the same as what Tanaka did, what your father did. You didn't choose violence, you chose protection. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Because it felt the same. Felt like I was my father's son after all." "You're not him." She pulled back to look at his face. "Your father would have hit first, asked questions never. You negotiated. You documented. You gave them every chance to stop. You only fought when there was no other choice. That's not cruelty, that's leadership." "I'm so tired, Meghan. Tired of fighting, of always being ready for the next threat." "Then let's make sure this is the last one," she said. "Let's finish what we started. Complete transition to legitimate operations. Retire from anything that keeps you in the line of fire. We have a daughter now. She needs her father alive and present, not dead or in prison." Nagato looked at her, then at Amara sleeping peacefully in her crib. "You're right. It's time. Past time." He took a deep breath. "I'll announce my retirement from all non-legitimate operations. Turn over control of those aspects to trusted people who can manage them properly. Focus entirely on our legal businesses and on our family." "You're sure? What about the people who depend on you?" "They'll be taken care of. Better care than I could provide while trying to maintain one foot in each world." He smiled tiredly. "Besides, I have a daughter to raise and a wife who deserves a husband who comes home safely every night. That matters more than empire." Over the following months, Nagato systematically withdrew from the underground world. He transferred operations, set up legitimate employment for people who'd worked in the shadows, ensured families were provided for. It was complicated, messy, and occasionally contentious, but he persevered. Minacio recovered fully, though she walked with a slight limp. "Badge of honor," she called it. She took over more of the day-to-day business operations, freeing Nagato to focus on strategic planning and family time. Meghan's art career soared. A major museum acquired an entire series for their permanent collection. She was commissioned for a mural in Seoul's new cultural center. Her work appeared in international publications, always with the note that she was pushing boundaries and bridging cultures. They found joy in small things: family dinners, watching Amara hit developmental milestones, Sunday mornings spent lazy in bed while their daughter napped. It was ordinary in the best way possible, the life they'd fought so hard to build. But one threat remained, one person who'd never quite accepted the new order. And he was planning one final move that would test everything they'd built. The transition to complete legitimacy took 18 months. 18 months of negotiations, restructuring, and carefully severing ties to anything that could come back to haunt them. Nagato worked with lawyers, accountants, and investigators to ensure every business was clean, every operation above board, every employee legitimate. It wasn't easy. He took financial losses accepting below-market prices for divested operations. Some old associates felt betrayed and cut ties completely. But slowly, painstakingly, the Kim family businesses became exactly what Nagato had envisioned: successful, ethical, and entirely legal. Meghan watched him transform as the weight lifted. He smiled more easily, laughed at Amara's antics with genuine lightness, slept through nights without nightmares. The man she'd fallen in love with was still there, but now he could exist fully without the constant shadow of danger. They renewed their vows on their second anniversary, a private ceremony with just family. This time, the promises felt different, not declarations against an uncertain future, but affirmations of everything they'd already built together. "I promise to protect you," Nagato said, holding both her hands. "And I have. But more importantly, you've protected me. From becoming my father. From losing myself to darkness. From forgetting that there's more to life than survival. You've given me purpose, family, joy. You've given me a reason to be better every single day." Meghan's vows were equally emotional. "You caught me when I was falling, and you've been catching me ever since. Every time I doubted myself, every time I was scared, every time I needed someone to believe in me. You've shown me that strength isn't about control or dominance, but about choosing love even when it's terrifying. You've built a life for us that's beautiful and real and ours. I'm so proud of who you've become, who we've become together." Amara, now walking and babbling constantly, tried to join them at the altar, making everyone laugh through their tears. Life continued its new rhythm. Nagato's galleries expanded internationally. Meghan's solo show in Paris sold out, establishing her as a significant voice in contemporary art. They bought a second home outside Seoul, a traditional hanok that they modernized while preserving its historical elements, a place where Amara could run in gardens and they could retreat from city life. Minacio found her own happiness, surprisingly, with a prosecutor who'd worked on some of the cases that had helped dismantle their illegal operations. Watching them fall in love was entertaining, two strong-willed people constantly challenging each other, clearly perfect for one another. "Never thought I'd see Minacio smitten," Meghan said to Nagato one evening, watching his sister actually giggle at something her boyfriend said. "Never thought I'd be married with a child, living a completely legal life and loving it," Nagato countered. "People change. For the better," Meghan agreed. But peace, as they'd learned, was always temporary. The threat came from an unexpected direction. Kim Sang-ho had been one of Nagato's father's most trusted men, someone who'd served the family for 40 years. He'd accepted early retirement when Nagato transitioned to legitimate operations, taking a generous pension and seeming content to fade into obscurity. But retirement hadn't suited him. He'd watched everything he'd built his life around disappear, replaced by what he saw as weakness. And he'd been planning his revenge carefully, waiting for the perfect moment. That moment came when Amara was 2 years old. Sango leaked fabricated evidence to prosecutors suggesting that Nagato's businesses were still fronts for money laundering. The evidence was sophisticated enough to trigger investigations, freezing assets and threatening everything they'd built. "It's fake," Nagato said, reviewing the documents with his lawyers. "But proving that will take time, and the damage to our reputation is already done." "Can we trace where it came from?" Meghan asked. "Already did." Minzio entered the room, her expression grim. "Sangho. He's been planning this for over a year, building a case designed to look legitimate enough to cause maximum damage." Nagato's jaw tightened. "What does he want?" "Revenge. Recognition. To prove that the old ways were better." Minzio shook her head. "He's dying cancer. Wants to make one final statement before he goes." The investigations were brutal. Financial records scrutinized, employees questioned, media speculation constant. Meghan watched Nagato handle it with impressive composure, but she knew the toll it took. After everything they'd sacrificed to go legitimate, to have it all questioned felt like a betrayal of the worst kind. Then Sangho made his real move. He approached Meghan at Amara's preschool pickup, appearing suddenly beside her as she was buckling their daughter into the car seat. "Mrs. Kim," he said in accented English, "we should talk." Meghan's security detail moved to intervene, but Sangho raised his hands. "I'm just talking. No threats. But you should hear what I have to say." Against her better judgment, Meghan listened. Sangho spoke about Nagato's father, about the empire they'd built together, about the respect and fear that had kept Seoul stable for decades. "Your husband destroyed all of that," Sangho said. "Made us weak. Made us targets. Everything I worked for, gone because he fell in love and went soft." "He chose a better life," Meghan said firmly. "One without violence and fear. That's not weakness, that's evolution." "That's extinction," Sangho countered. "But I'll offer you a choice. Convince Nagato to return control of the organization to the old guard. We'll retract the evidence, clear his name, and he can keep his legitimate businesses. Or refuse, and I'll make sure every prosecutor, every investigator, every media outlet knows stories that will destroy him. Some true, some not, doesn't matter. By the time we're done, he'll be in prison or dead, and you'll be raising your daughter alone." Meghan felt rage boil through her. "You think threatening my family will make us give you what you want? You don't know us at all." "I know Nagato would do anything to protect you and that little girl," Sangho said, glancing at Amara. "Even sacrifice everything he's built. Think about my offer, Mrs. Kim. You have 3 days." When Meghan told Nagato that evening, she'd never seen him so angry. Not the cold, controlled anger of his Mafia boss days, but genuine fury at the threat to his family. "He approached you at Amara's school?" Nagato's voice was dangerous. "He put himself near our daughter?" "He wants you scared enough to make a mistake," Minjo said. She'd come over as soon as Meghan called. "Don't give him that. We handle this smart." "I want him gone," Nagato said flatly. "Not killed, I'm done with that. But neutralized. Permanently." They worked through the night developing a strategy. Sangho was dying and desperate, which made him unpredictable. But it also meant he'd been sloppy in his fabrications. With enough resources, they could prove the evidence was manufactured. More importantly, they could expose Sangho's own crimes, decades of them, documented and waiting to be revealed. "Mutually assured destruction," Minzio summarized. "We release our evidence on him, he releases his fabrications on us. Difference is ours is real and his isn't. We might take some heat, but he goes to prison for what's left of his life." "Do it," Nagato said without hesitation. But Meghan had a different idea. "Or we offer him something he wants more than revenge." They looked at her questioningly. "Legacy," she explained. "He's dying. What he really wants is to be remembered, to have his contributions recognized. What if we give him that? Establish a foundation in his name, documenting the history he was part of, not glorifying violence, but acknowledging the complicated reality of what Seoul's underworld was. Let him tell his story, be interviewed by historians. Give him immortality of a different kind." "That's surprisingly compassionate for someone who threatened our daughter," Minzio said. "It's practical," Meghan countered. "He gets what he really wants. We get peace. Amara grows up without her father going back to war. Everyone wins." Nagato studied her thoughtfully. "When did you become the strategic one?" "I learned from the best." She kissed him softly. What do you think? Is it worth trying? After long consideration, Nagato agreed. They approached Sangho through intermediaries, presenting the offer. A foundation dedicated to documenting Seoul's criminal history honestly, the violence and the community protection, the fear and the order, the costs and the benefits. Sangho could be the primary historical consultant, his legacy preserved forever. Sangho was suspicious at first, but the prospect of being remembered, of having his life's work acknowledged rather than erased, gradually won him over. He agreed to retract his fabrications in exchange for the foundation and a guarantee that certain historical facts about Nagato's father would be documented accurately, not sanitized. Your husband was always more like his mother than his father, Sangho told Meghan at their final meeting, his voice weak from illness. Maybe that's not weakness after all. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe we all do the best we can with what we know, Meghan said gently. And maybe it's never too late to choose something better. Sangho died 3 months later. The foundation was established as promised, and became an important resource for understanding Seoul's complicated history. The investigations into Nagato's businesses concluded with complete exoneration, and their family moved forward, scarred but intact. On Amara's 3rd birthday, they celebrated with family and friends in their garden. Watching their daughter blow out candles, surrounded by people they loved, Nagato pulled Meghan close. "Thank you," he said against her hair. "For what?" "For showing me that there's always another way. For being smarter and more compassionate than I deserve. For building this life with me." "We built it together," she corrected. "That's what makes it strong." That night, after everyone left and Amara was asleep, they made love with the tenderness of people who'd survived everything and chosen each other anyway. Afterward, wrapped in tangled sheets, Meghan said, "I want another baby." Nagato's eyes widened. "Another? Amara needs a sibling. I want our family to grow. I want more of this, the chaos, the joy, the love. What do you think?" His answer was to kiss her deeply, and she felt his smile against her lips. "I think I want everything with you. Always have, always will." 6 months later, Meghan discovered she was pregnant again. This time with twins, a boy and a girl. Nagato cried when they saw the ultrasound, overwhelmed by how much goodness life had given him after so much darkness. Their family expanded, their businesses thrived, their love deepened with each passing year. The violence that had once defined Nagato's existence became a distant memory, replaced by the beautiful chaos of raising 3 children and building an empire of a different kind, one founded on art, ethics, and love. 5 years after Amara's birth, life had become something Meghan and Nagato had never quite imagined. Their family was loud, chaotic, and filled with laughter. Amara, now 7, was showing early artistic talent that made Meghan's heart swell. The twins, Minjun and Zara, were 4 and already displaying personalities as different as night and day. Minjun serious and thoughtful like his father, Zara wild and creative like her mother. Nagato's businesses had expanded globally. The galleries were renowned throughout Asia and Europe. His tech companies were innovating in ethical AI. The foundation they'd established in Sangho's name had become an important research center, helping current organizations transition away from violence toward legitimate operations. Meghan's art had reached new heights. A retrospective at the Seoul Museum of Modern Art was in planning. She'd been commissioned for public installations in 3 countries. Her work explored themes of identity, transformation, and redemption, obviously influenced by her own journey. They'd found balance. Nagato was present for every school event, every bedtime story, every family dinner. The children knew nothing of his past except what they'd someday understand, that their father had made mistakes but had chosen to become better. Minato was Aunt Min, beloved and slightly intimidating, married now with a daughter of her own. But the past, as Meghan had learned, never truly stayed buried. The threat came through an unexpected channel. A man named Chin Wei appeared in Seoul, claiming to be the illegitimate son of Park Jae-sung, the rival boss Nagato had killed during that warehouse confrontation years ago. Chin had been raised in China, knowing nothing of his father's identity until recently. Now he wanted revenge for a father he'd never known, driven by romanticized ideas of honor and blood debt. The first warning came through a letter delivered to their home, bypassing security through sheer luck and timing. Chin outlined his grievances, his plans to destroy everything Nagato loved, his belief that only blood could answer blood. "He's delusional," Minacio said, reviewing the letter with her prosecutor husband. "Park died during a police raid officially. There's no legal case here." "But there is a threat," Nagato said quietly, looking at his children playing in the next room. He's not interested in legality. He wants justice as he understands it. Meghan felt old fears resurface. They'd worked so hard to leave violence behind. She couldn't let it touch their children. What do? We talked to him, Nagato said, surprising everyone. I killed his father. That's not romanticized, that's real. He deserves to hear the truth from me, make his own decision about what happens next. That's insane, Minicio protested. He could kill you. He could. But I've learned from my wife that talking, offering truth and compassion, sometimes works better than threats. Nagato looked at Meghan. Will you come with me? I need you there. It was crazy. Dangerous. Everything they'd moved past. But Meghan saw the resolution in his eyes and knew this was something he needed to do, not as the mafia boss he'd been but as the man he'd become. The meeting was arranged in a neutral location, a tea house in a quiet part of Seoul with security outside but none inside. Just Nagato, Meghan, and Chin Wei, a young man in his mid-20s with his father's eyes and his mother's features, rage and grief warring in his expression. You killed my father, Chin said without preamble. I did, Nagato acknowledged. Park Jae-sung attacked my sister, threatened my family and refused every attempt at peace. When he finally came after me directly, I defended myself. He died in that fight. So you admit it? I've never denied it. I've done many things I regret, hurt people, caused suffering. Your father's death is part of that history. Nagato leaned forward, his voice earnest. But I can't bring him back. I can only tell you the truth and let you decide what happens next. Chin looked between them, confused by the lack of defensiveness. You're not going to threaten me? Offer me money to go away? No, Meghan said gently. We're going to offer you the truth. Your father was a complicated man. He protected his people but was brutal to enemies. He rejected change and progress because he feared losing power. Nagato's father was the same way. The difference is Nagato chose to break that cycle. To build something better. My mother said he was a great man, Chin said, but his voice wavered. I'm sure he was to her. To you. People are complicated, they can be loving fathers and violent criminals at the same time. Nagato pulled out a folder, sliding it across the table. This contains everything I know about your father. His history, his operations, the confrontation that led to his death. It's all there, unedited. You deserve to know who he really was, not just the legend your mother told you. Chin stared at the folder like it might explode. Why would you give me this? Because you deserve the truth. Because I understand wanting to know your father, even the difficult parts. Because I'm tired of secrets and lies. Nagato's voice was steady. Read it. Learn about him. Then decide what you want to do. If you choose revenge, I won't run. But I hope you'll choose differently. Choose the life your father never gave himself the chance to have. One without violence, built on truth and connection. Meghan added softly, we have 3 children. They're innocent in all of this. Whatever you decide, I'm asking you to consider them. They deserve to grow up with their father, just like you deserve to know yours. Tears tracked down Chen's face. I don't know what to do. I came here expecting a monster and you're just people. With children. With a life. We are people, Nagato confirmed. Flawed, complicated people who've made mistakes but are trying to do better. Just like everyone else. They talked for hours. Chin shared stories his mother had told him about Park. Some clearly idealized, others probably true. Nagato shared his own memories, both good and terrible, not sugarcoating anything. Meghan spoke about the cost of violence, the weight of legacy, the possibility of choosing something different. When they finally left the tea house, Chin hadn't decided what he'd do. But he'd agreed to read the folder, to think carefully, to meet again before making any final choices. Over the following weeks, they met several more times. Chin read everything, asked questions, processed the complicated truth of who his father had been. Slowly, his rage transformed into something more nuanced, grief for the father he'd never known, anger at the circumstances that had shaped Park's choices, and reluctant respect for Nagato's honesty. At their final meeting, Chin said, I'm going back to China. Not because I forgive you, I don't know if I can. But because I don't want to become my father. I don't want violence to define my life the way it defined his. That's wise, Nagato said. If you ever need anything, job references, business connections, just someone who understands complicated family history, contact me. No obligations, no expectations. Why would you help me? Because you're your father's son and he deserved better than the life he had. Because you're choosing differently and that should be supported. Because it's the right thing to do. Chun left Seoul with the folder, contact information, and a different future than the one he'd imagined. Meghan watched the plane depart and felt profound relief. "Do you think we'll hear from him again?" she asked Nagato. "Maybe. Maybe not. But we gave him the truth and a choice. That's all we could do." Life continued. The children grew, bringing new challenges and joys. Amara started formal art lessons, her talent obvious to anyone who saw her work. Minjun showed an aptitude for mathematics and strategy, already talking about business school. Zara was still figuring out her path but approached everything with fearless enthusiasm. Meghan and Nagato's love deepened with time, as the best relationships do. They'd survived everything: violence, threats, pregnancy scares, sleepless nights with sick children, business crises, and self-doubt. Through it all, they'd chosen each other, chosen honesty, chosen growth. On their 10th anniversary, they returned to that nightclub where they'd first met. It had been renovated, modernized, barely recognizable. But standing in the space where Meghan had once fainted and Nagato had caught her, they felt the weight of everything that had happened since. "Do you regret it?" Nagato asked softly. "Any of it?" Meghan looked at him, this man who'd been a dangerous stranger, then a lover, then a partner, then the father of her children. This man who'd transformed himself through sheer will and love. Not a single second. Even the scary parts brought us here. Where's here? Happy. Safe. Together. Building a legacy that's about creation instead of destruction. Raising children who'll never know the violence we survived. Being completely, ridiculously in love with you. She touched his face tenderly. "You caught me when I was falling and you've been catching me ever since." "You caught me too," he said. "In ways I didn't even know I needed. You saw past the danger to the man I could be. You made me believe I deserved better, could be better." They kissed in that same nightclub, now transformed just like they'd been transformed. From Mafia boss and struggling art student to husband and wife, parents and partners, two people who'd built something beautiful from dangerous beginnings. 3 months later, Meghan surprised Nagato with news that she was pregnant again. Their 4th child, another daughter they'd named Grace Hannah. Grace for the unlikely mercy that had brought them together, Hannah for the flower that blooms even in difficult circumstances. "Our cup overflows," Nagato said, hand on her growing belly. "It really does," Meghan agreed. They stood on their terrace, Seoul glittering below them, their 3 children playing in the living room behind them, a 4th on the way, and a future stretching ahead that was theirs to shape. From that nightclub fainting incident to this moment, a family, a life, a love that had conquered everything thrown at it. What happens when a nobody crashes into the world of the most dangerous man in the city? Meghan said softly, echoing that first teaser. Nagato pulled her close, kissing her temple. She becomes the most important person in his world. She saves him from himself. They build something extraordinary together. They live happily ever after, not because it's easy but because they choose each other every single day. "That's our story," Meghan said. "That's our truth," Nagato corrected. "And I wouldn't change a single chapter." As the sun set over Seoul, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, they held each other close. Two people from impossible circumstances who'd found their way to possible, probable, and finally inevitable love. The kind that survives everything. The kind that transforms. The kind that catches you when you're falling and never lets go. Their children's laughter floated from inside, mixing with the city sounds below. Somewhere in that same Seoul, other stories were beginning. Other people finding each other in unexpected ways, other transformations waiting to unfold. But this story, their story, had found its perfect ending that was really just another beginning. From fainting in a nightclub to building an empire of love and art and family, Meghan and Nagato had written their own tale. One of forbidden passion, deadly secrets, and unbreakable bonds. One that proved love could conquer all, even when the odds seemed impossible. One that was, above everything else, real. How do you feel about Meghan and Nagato's story? Did their love conquer all, or was it too dangerous? Drop your opinions in the comments and let me know if you'd want a sequel.